smokes up.
When we think about the last years of prog, the impression given is that the classic prog bands were reduced to dust with no radio play across all regions, and that the masses couldn't stop listening to punk rock. These impressions are fairly accurate, particularly in the West, due to the social unrest shown within the economic problems that made people buy equipment of less quality for less quality music, thus making the rise of punk inevitable, coming right from the heels of the Ramones, Sex Pistols, and The Clash. With hits such as Anarchy in the UK, prog had to take defensive positions, and they did, except for King Crimson, a band that remained dormant during these times. So it was up to Yes, Genesis, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer. ELP was the first to strike, with Works, featuring a cover of a classic song called Fanfare for the Common Man. It was a moderate but intentional hit. On July 15, 1977, Yes followed suit with Going for the One, an album that featured an ass in the cover, issued with the mission to attract their masses of the asses, and also as a message towards punk. And I quote, "Their music is ass." Genesis took a while to respond. They were in fear of hitting their own men. In this case, Peter Gabriel, responsible for creating the proto-punk track back in NYC, with Genesis back in 1974. Yet the hit with Genesis was severe. In late 1977, Wine and Wuthering was the album that featured the most amount of chords to that point. Finishing 1977, ELP released the second volume of Works, an attack made just to maintain momentum. Starting 1978, while prog had done a good campaign, punk was still on the rise. However, starting the year, Genesis launched Operation Follow You, Follow Me. The punk nation was shaken, a surprise direct hit with the masses. Yes followed with Tormato, another success. But it wasn't enough, and the band was conflicted. They were struck by punk, much like the album cover was by The Tomato, to the point that even Rick Wakeman asked the label to drop punk bands from their catalog of artists. The last line of defense ended up breaking down completely. The last planes of ELP fell into the Love Beach in November 1978, ending the year with a devastating loss for the prog camp. 1979 saw ELP disbanding, Genesis finishing one of their most successful tours, and just making a strategic alliance with the Buggles. It looked like punk had just won the 70s, leading up to the 1980s supremacy. However, espionage intel from the prog camp revealed that the frontman of The Clash was actually privately educated. Thanks to this, the prog camp was able to gain a bit more momentum. On late March 1980, Genesis literally released a nuke called Duke, a direct response because of what they did to ELP, and then came Yes with Drama. Living up to its name, the album was a moderate success, but caused drama inside the band once again. Thus, Genesis became the last line of defense for prog, but they knew that they could not hold them any longer, and so Operation New Wave started. This time, even King Crimson appeared with Discipline in 1981, while Genesis did Abacab, and all ex and in Genesis members started making strides towards a new sound. People like Peter Gabriel with Peter Gabriel, Steve with the hit Cell 151, Phil with the hit album Face Value. It really seems like there was no one stopping the old guard. Genesis and King Crimson kept releasing albums. Yes suddenly reappeared with 90125 in 1983, and even ELP revived in 1986. Punk probably won many battles, but they never won the war. Sadly, music went to shit anyway, so who cares?